be so close to just punching that ticket into the top 8.
Yeah, if you get to 6-0, you don't want to say you're a lock, but you kind of think you're a lock. And then if you fall to 5-1, hey, you're still in great shape to win the last 2 rounds, or maybe even just one of the last 2 rounds and sneak in there anyway.
Right, we're in a spot where 7 wins, you're definitely going to be in, and then we think 1 or 2 6 wins may get in.
Absolutely. So to me, it's interesting to see Sultai Ramp here at the top of the standings. And I know over at that Red Bull event that you mentioned, Manny Javudi was 8-0 in that tournament with Sultai Ramp. So I wonder if that deck may be more well-positioned than people are giving it credit for. And you see one of the big incentives to move into Sultai, and that's Casualties of War, which I don't think this is really the matchup for it. But if you're facing off against these other base Simic decks like Bant Ramp or Simic Ramp, that card is a game breaker.
Yeah, just anytime Casualties of War is able to target more than 2 permanents at once, it's just such a colossal win for these ramp decks.
Or even, okay, I'll hit your Trail of Crumbs and your Witch's Oven, or your Bolus Citadel even, and your creature and your land. Like, if you get to hit 3 or more things with that Casualties, you feel good about that investment.
If you hit a high score with Casualties of War getting to use every mode, it just makes your week.
Absolutely, and we see that dynamic duo of Nissa Who Shakes the World and Hydrocrisis then in Iaali's hand. He's happy to fire off this Crisis for 2 just to cycle it effectively. He has all of these big hitters, just needs the mana sources to cast them.
Right, and we see this so many times with these go big decks. All you want to do is take whatever game actions that you can to ensure that you continue developing onto the battlefield. In this case, hitting your land drops.
And 2/2 Shark versus 2/2 Jellyfish, a battle as old as time, or I guess 3 months old in Magic terms. But David Inglis has an Explosion, has Gust as an interactive card, but not too much else going on, and kind of flooding out a little bit here with drawing his 8th land for the turn.
Well, one of the upsides to flooding out here a bit is this is a deck that, with cards like Explosion, can make great use of just having an absurd amount of mana.
Absolutely, and if Iaali does not apply pressure soon, maybe if he misses on those future land drops for Nissa, for Casualties, or even with Gust delaying those for turn, we could just build up to a manual Explosion that can then get things going.
Right, and you can see Inglis just really attacking here, trying to either take that trade or just pressure Iaali's life total. When you have something like Explosion, just putting someone closer to dead is worth so much.
Oh, and there's Watery Grave, a 5th untapped land for Nissa Who Shakes the World. That's getting gusted right away. And I imagine that's going straight back to the top of Iaali's deck. And the 2/2 Crisis, no attacks, no blocks for this Crisis, or are we getting frisky with it?
I have to imagine it's going to do one of those 2 things, but it may be that Iaali just wants to reduce the resources on the battlefield now, knowing that Inglis is trying to actually adopt this more reactive posture.
Yeah, another land for Inglis, and crucially, no second red source, so he can't even fire off, let's say, an Explosion for 2 on the Crisis to keep applying pressure. But it is interesting when you allow your opponent to attack, you don't block, and then you then have to choose whether to make that same trade next, and even though things haven't really changed that much, and so you then go back and think, well, did I just let 2 points through for no reason, or was the dynamic actually different in that turn?
Right, and even if it was a mistake last turn, I do like kind of saying, no, this is the right thing to do, let's go ahead, center myself, and make the right decision.
For sure. If you make what you think could be a mistake in retrospect, no reason to double down on that and compound it even further,
Exactly.
And we're seeing with Nissa Who Shakes the World animating the Overgrown Tomb, holding up Heartless Act in the process. And that's a nice thing about Nissa in the Sultai deck. You have 12 forests now between Breeding Pool, Overgrown Tomb, and Zagoth Triumph that can allow you to hold up a non-green spell on the turn you play Nissa, whether it's Aetherghast, Heartless Act. You have a lot of forests and you're making a lot of mana.
And holding up a Triome with Nissa just feels so broken.
And here we go, Uro and escaping Uro on this turn. So Inglis finally making some things happen, but now that is a juicy target for that Casualties of War, or just Heartless Act.
Yeah, Iaali's got to feel like this is a huge win for him here. And I would not even be surprised if we just see one of these Casualties of War fired off on a red source this next turn.
Yeah, if your opponent has so many cards in hand and they haven't been doing anything and they're missing a second red source, you can put the pieces of that puzzle together.
Oh yeah, you know what's going on.
So 6-mana Stone Rain? Are we in?
Oh, I don't know. We did draw a Hydroid Crisis. I think it's time to make a very big fish.
A jellyfish, lest we forget.
Do 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 do. Yeah, no, it's just not the same. I'm sorry.
So he's thinking now, does he want to just sink all of his mana into this Crisis, or do you hold it up so that if you draw a relevant interactive card, you get to play that on the same turn?
Well, the nice thing here is you don't really have to choose, because Nissa is great in untapping any of these dual lands, getting into the red zone, and having a host of reactive spells available.
And the scariest card of all here is the Sloth Diamond, as it's commonly known.
Blocks Diamond, and I will hear no arguments.
And just more lands off the Crisis and the Growth Spiral. So not the best pick up there for Iaali, but he'll take having a 10-10 flying Trampler in play for sure. No complaints.
There is a point here. Letting Inglis untap with this expansion explosion could end up being fairly punishing. As it represents 6 cards.
Well, not just that, but you think if, let's say, Inglis drew a Wilderness Reclamation, then suddenly this can go very wrong very quickly.
If you're in David's seat, you've got to be disappointed that you are a mana short of killing this Nissa with this expansion explosion.
Absolutely, and the 10-10 is untouchable, so I guess you just pick off a land and hope that buys you enough time. I guess
it all feels so bad, but if you don't go after one of these lands, you might just die.
I think, honestly, the move might be, we Explosion the face and hope to assemble a second Explosion plus a Reclamation on the following turn.
Oh, that's a line, because as it stands, Iaali is 1 point short of lethal here.
Yeah, so you can deal 19 damage on that turn.
Notably very different than 20.
Yeah, here we go. So that's a Reclamation. No second Explosion yet, but he's going to have a draw step to find it.
You get several looks at it as well, just between Growth Spirals, Teferi, and the like.
And just a land there for Iaali. So I think what we're going to see is at least one 6-mana Stone Rain on this turn, and possibly 2, I'm guessing, looking at those red sources.
Yeah, with Inglis sending that upstairs, you have to imagine there's another one coming. Or that is the out, at least, if nothing is being interacted with on the battlefield.
Absolutely. So the Grazer stays back. I just get it in there, send a message. And this Casualties Award, you don't want to use this as a 6-mana Stone Rain, but that could be a game-winning line in this spot.
Classic Rain of Salt maneuver.
And at this point, Iaali doesn't even care if Inglis can escape an Uro or something like that. That's just not where this game is going. And just a Temple Garden there for Inglis. So I think this is going to sew out game 1 here.
Yeah, just bricking on that copy of Explosion off the top. I don't see how Inglis can come back at this point.
Yeah, so I think we'll see game 1 go to Christopher Iaali in short order here. And it's worth noting too that Iaali's deck, often with Sultai, you can call it Sultai Midrange, Sultai Ramp. This is a Sultai Ramp deck. We have 4 Crisis, 3 Casualties of War, 4 Nissa, 3 Ugin the Spirit Dragon at the top end here. So he's kind of going bigger than the dedicated Simic Ramp decks almost.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a spot where just being able to go over the top of those is worth so much here.
And there he is, the king in Inglis' sideboard. I'm not sure if that's a go-to for this matchup. I think he's more interested in some of these cheap interactive cards, like we see Aethergast Negate, Dovin's Veto. And then for Iaali's side, there's a lot of clunkers that he would like to shave if he wants to, but we see that traditional game breaker against Reclamation in Thought Distortion coming in.
Right, and a lot of times you're just trying to use that against these super spell-based decks that can't actually outgrind you through traditional means and have to have some sort of combo like that Reclamation Explosion 1-2 punch to end a game.
Yeah, I think back a few weeks to we saw Paolo get Thought Distortioned on turn 4, I believe, from a Sultai deck, but he had one Nightpack Ambusher and then found a second one, and that by itself was able to, over a few turns and with a few missteps along the way, that was able to get him across the finish line. And with Joriel in the mix a lot of the time too, you kind of see that same dynamic, and I guess Kenrith might fill the same role here for Inglis, but still, by and large, if you stick an early Thought Distortion, that puts you in a nice spot.
Right, and this is a spot where that Kenrith is just really hoping to fill that role of being the backup creature beatdown in the case that we see Iaali invest a bunch of time into resolving something like Thought Distortion.
And in speaking to Inglis about this 4-color Reclamation deck, the vibe I got every time I checked in with it over the past few weeks was, it seemed like it shouldn't be great, but I can't find anything else that I like, and this just keeps winning for me, so why not? And sure enough, he has kept winning with it. So why change what's working? Why mess with the success?
Yeah, exactly. At this point, he's already up to the coveted League 5-0, just hoping to lock up a couple more match wins to punch his ticket to that season championship on the SCG Tour Online.
Absolutely. And in this position, he kind of has a lot to give. If he falls to Iaali in this match, his back kind of up against the wall, but very realistic still that he can work his way into that top 8.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He's already won 5 matches. What's 2 more?
Mm-hmm. And Iaali looking to win just one more game this match, cement the 6-0, which should lock him for our top 8 here as well. And Iaali, a very accomplished player who, not much fanfare, not someone who you hear a lot about, but you always see him at the top tables of these things, playing well with an interesting deck in his hands.
Oh, yeah, no slouch in the slightest, and really just piloting one of these sequencing-based mid-range decks to great success. This is something we saw Fabrizio and Terry take all the way to the top 4 last weekend.
For sure, and we have the Growth Spiral start for Iaali with Nissus to come into on turn 4, decent mana, and then for Inglis, a hand which is fine, like it has things going on, but I don't know how happy he's going to be with it.
Yeah, it's the type of hand where it has lands and it has spells, but you don't really know if you want to keep it. This is something we frequently affectionately refer to as the keep lose.
Yes, it's almost a speculative hand in a weird way, where all of these cards are good, like Uro, obnoxiously good, some would say. Shark Typhoon, we mentioned how good that card is, but he does need to find things off those in order to tie the room together here.
Right, you're certainly leaning on the top of your deck to do a good bit of lifting here.
Absolutely, and that Dovin's Veto for Inglis is a very nice start in that direction. Countering Anissa or Kauji's of War, not Thought Distortion. We got to get underneath that one, but a lot of the other top-end payoffs, that Veto trades very profitably with those.
Right, just having a way to actually interact with one of these Nissa who shakes the world that isn't just putting it back on top of Iaali's library is a big deal for Inglis.
Mm-hmm. And so for Iaali here, he can keep making his land drops and maybe debating the timing of this growth spiral, whether he wants to do it on his own turn or fire it off, maybe even on Inglis's upkeep or his end step.
Yeah, I imagine you just want to make sure that the growth spiral ends up resolving.
Yeah, so right now, before Uro can put another land into play, maybe hold up a dispute, something like that.
Yeah, that's a spot where Iaali was likely hoping to rip a copy of Mystical Dispute to shock in that breeding pool, tag the Uro, untap, and then just get to do whatever he wanted.
Yeah, and Chris only has 2 copies of Mystical Dispute alongside 2 Negate, so he does have some forms of interaction here, whereas Inglis is loaded up on Disputes, Negates, Vetoes, more Negates in the sideboard.
Right, and this is almost that flash side of things that we see out of the Temur Reclamation decks a lot, where Inglis just doesn't have a reason to spend mana on his own turn.
Yeah, he doesn't have a flash threat like Nightpack Ambusher that can really swing the game very suddenly, but Shark Typhoon can do a decent approximation of that enough of the time.
Oh, and look at this bluff shock. Ooh. Gotta represent negate somewhere.
I love it.
And look at Inglis's hand, negate next to Dovin's Veto. It just feels wrong, doesn't it?
But which camp are you? Are you Team Negate or Team Dovin's Veto?
Oh, I don't care, but I'm only in one of them.
You got no horse in this fight. You just want some uniformity. Your
deck can support a Dovin's Veto or it can't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and we see Iaali's deck here really living into that Sultai ramp moniker. Cultivate, finding 2 more lands to join the what is it now, 8 on the battlefield, 2 more in his hand, and 2 copies of Nissa to pump out even more mana generation, as if the situation called for that.
And this is Iaali paying a ton of respect to a card like Mystical Dispute. We've seen this whole game Iaali try to maneuver around a perceived copy of one of those. This is wanting to desire to cast Nissa on 8 mana rather than 5.
Absolutely, but those 2 negates plus vetoes will trade, and there's the dispute. Negate and veto can trade so cleanly with those Nissas, and then at that point, Inglis has a lot of gas left over. A second Shard Typhoon, a Kenrith that just came off the top of the deck, can maybe escape Uro as well, so he has a lot of stuff to clean up with here.
Right, on one hand, you could even see the Shark Typhoon just being used to answer Nissa, but you might want to hold your counterspells for more powerful reactive cards, or proactive cards.
And there's Ugin the Spirit Dragon, so a third big threat that might merit a veto or a negate. But at this point, with the second Shark Typhoon, Inglis can just attack down those Nissas. I don't even know if he feels the need to counter both of them.
Right, I really would not be surprised if we just see Nissa get killed in combat rather than on the stack.
Yeah, this is where Iaali could really use a Hydro Crisis, where the body itself might get countered by that dispute that Inglis has picked up, but drawing a bunch of cards in the process is exactly what he needs. So there's Nissa, and Inglis thinking through his options here. We do see a negate take it down. And that Triumph cycle just found a breeding pool, so a lot of lands here for Iaali, and not much else going on beyond those Planeswalkers.
And seeing Inglis go down this path of using counter magic on these Nissas may end up coming back to bite him if he can't actually close the game by the time it comes time to use this Ugin.
Oh, but there's Aether Gust and Wilderness Reclamation, so he can stick the Reclamation, have Veto and Gust and Dispute all up on Iaali's turn, and that Gust can buy another turn against that Nissa, crucially.
Yeah, I would expect to just see a serve for 5 with these Sharks, a Wilderness Reclamation, and a pass with all the counter magic in the world, with Kenrith slamming the door next turn.
Are we going to see that combo of Reclamation and Kenrith?
Ooh, it's a good combo. We could just see
this. This works too. This is fine.
This is Inglis sensing weakness here.
And we're at the point in the game now where even a card like Thought Distortion would not get the job done. Iaali would just be dead.
And what I'm expecting here is that Inglis is actually just respecting both Casualties of War as well as Aether Gust, and not wanting to slam the Wilderness Reclamation into it.
Yeah, he's thinking about all the things he needs to play around here, and Dovin's Veto or Mystical Dispute. I imagine Veto just to play around a Dispute on the backside. That's going to get the job done, and David Inglis will tie this match up at a game apiece.
And that's just a textbook example of profitable mana exchanges for Inglis conquering the entire game.
Yeah, and we see Uro being shaved by Iaali here, and that's the thing you commonly see. Those are heading back into the deck, though. You often see that against these Reclamation decks, where it's kind of hard to resolve it, and you're tapping a lot of mana on your main phase, and it gets disputed easily. But he decides that's still better on balance than having even more of these big expensive cards in the deck.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to actually examine the way that you're trying to approach a matchup and realize that it isn't always about having the most powerful cards. Sometimes it's just about making sure you can get onto the battlefield.
Oh, Emma, how do you like that Lottie Denial in Inglis's sideboard?
Honestly, so that's actually a card that was in his main deck going into the tournament, and I think he's made the very wise decision of benching it. Hopefully he's been doing this most of the rounds, because it would really explain why he has won 5 consecutive matches.
That was the thing holding him back, is putting that Lofty Denial in his deck.
I mean, it's possible.
I admire it. I like the thought behind it. You know, it's so good with Shark Typhoon, and especially those Spectral Sailors in his sideboard, but not a conventional choice, to be sure.
Right, if it were a sideboard package with the Sailors, I would be way more on board with it. It is a main deck option. It's shaky. Wow, and Iaali snaps the keep off.
Okay, yeah, you got lands, you got one of your premier threats, you got a good piece of interaction. This is the kind of hand which you can see this ending badly, but like, what are you hoping to mulligan into?
Right, there's a point where Growth Spiral ultimately requires you to have another resource in order for it to play well. Same is true for anything like a Boreal Grazer. So just being able to naturally put your lands onto the battlefield while having a way to interact with what the opponent is doing and a way to close the game, that's all you can ask for.
And a 6-card hand for Inglis, which just picks up a copy of Ithaca, so another nice piece of interaction there. And he's kind of in the same boat. He's got the negate too. He's got a Shark Typhoon, which can make something happen early, but he's going to be looking for more interaction to follow that up with.
And Inglis just having Shark Typhoon plus interaction is the formula from last game.
Well, I meant to say action to follow that up with. Instead, he found interaction in the form of a second negate, which I imagine could do some nice work here, and including against, for example, that 6-mana Casualties of War.
On the other side of things, if Iaali just finds something like a Thought Distortion, that will be lights out for Inglis.
Yeah, that would eat his whole hand and really put the game away for Iaali. And this is why Casualties of War is kind of an awkward card in this matchup, where there aren't that many good targets, and it's also so hard to resolve that it's hard to imagine the scenario where it's really doing what you want it to do.
Right, the games where it ends up being strong are the ones that it feels like you've already kind of put away.
Mm-hmm. And there is the Uro back in the deck. It's helping Iaali to make more land drops, cycle through some cards, and it seems like he's going to pass a turn, hold up negate for a potential reclamation, which could let Inglis' start just go out of control.
In a lot of ways, that's what makes this reclamation deck, or all of the reclamation decks, almost feel like Splinter Twin, where you're forced to just hold up this mana because you're afraid of them casting a seemingly free Wilderness Reclamation if you don't.
I was told that Inverter of Truth is a new Splinter Twin, so Wilderness Reclamation is an Inverter of Truth, is my understanding.
Okay, so that means Expansion Explosion is a dig through time?
If you kind of tilt your head and look in the right direction, sure.
It's an Ipnu Rivulet, I understand.
Got it. But yeah, this draw go dynamic, I think, on paper, it seems to favor Inglis. However, Thought Distortion is the card that really upends that dynamic, where if Iaali just draws a Thought Distortion at any point, that's it. That's lights out.
That's the name of the game with so many of these ramp decks, is theoretically they are going to have all this air in Uro and Growth Spiral and Cultivate and so on, but they have just a handful of cards like Ugin, like Thought Distortion and so on, that can just slam the door shut without any kind of warning.
And there's an Uro for Inglis as well as another Growth Spiral. And for Inglis, I imagine he's going to be still continuing this reactive game. And the Bluff Shock again, love it. Although it's not really a bluff here, I guess. Negate through Dispute is going to be a crucial line.
Yeah, and just getting to cycle multiple Growth Spirals. If you want to cast both of them, you could theoretically hit a land off one and then be able to cast a Negate.
Absolutely. So a pair of Cultivates here, giving Iaali all the mana he could ever possibly want.
Real monkey's paw of divinations at this phase of the game. You get a divination, but it hits 2 lands.
I guess once you have literally removed all the basic lands from your deck, your spell density is a little higher, but that's not much consolation for Iaali at this stage.
Right, there is certainly a point where you still need to actually draw action here.
For sure, and I think Inglis is going to enjoy having the window to just cycle both of those Growth Spirals on Iaali's end step, try and find some more stuff to move this game forward.
Ooh, and hitting that land is nice, just having ways to actually pay for all of the spells that Inglis has available.
Absolutely. Second copy of Uro and Fable Passage for Inglis, so this might be a good window to not even take the shields down, because you still have 2 spells up that you can cast, but to get that Uro to cycle it, set it up for an escape maybe on the following turn.
How wild is it that Iaali can cast Casualties and Nissa next turn?
And I don't even know how good that is. That's the wild part to me.
There's certainly a point where killing a 2/2 and a land is just...
There it is.
That!
Okay,
my god!
This is the ball game. This is what we're playing towards.
Oh, good lord.
And this is where Iaali is popping off, I have to imagine. Just that's exactly what he needed, and he knew it.
Oh, I can hear him doing a Ric Flair impression from my living room right now. I can just hear a very faint woo! Oh,
and this is disgusting. He even gets a follow-up with the Nissa and untap a land and have that negate open in case Inglis draws a good non-creature card.
Wow, Inglis not even hitting him with the nice. Real poor emote for him here.
It would be worse for him if Iaali hit Inglis with a nice. Yeah, I think that's where you're driving the dagger.
Listen, some people really look up to Canister, and I understand it. Oh,
that mystical dispute, not relevant anymore. That's not what we're looking for. So
that may be the single worst mystical dispute ever drawn.
It is embarrassingly bad, which it needs to be bad sometimes to make up for all the time where it is the best possible card you could draw. But yeah, this is not one of those times.
Oh, this is just such a brutal situation.
Okay, we can attack Nissa for half of its loyalty, I suppose. Maybe.
Well, that's a start. You gotta start somewhere.
Yeah. And here's Uro cycling. Okay, there's an Ether Gust. Are we looking at maybe a draw step Ether Gust on the Nissa here?
That's sort of what I'm imagining will happen. Oh, gosh. And then it gets negated, and Casualties takes care of the Sailor and a land. This is all just going so wrong for Inglis here. All it took was that one thought distortion off the top. That is what's so good about these ramp decks.
And here's Uro with more than enough fuel to escape at this point for Iaali. And I think this will meet the Gus instead, but again, if Iaali wants to fight over that with the negate, he's more than happy to do it.
Oh, absolutely. This is a position where you're really just trying to close the game out while Inglis is still tripping over himself.
And this is one downside, if you want to call it that, of the Reclamation deck, where you don't have a card like Thought Distortion or Casualties of War that you can draw to yourself. All of your big finishes need you to have a lot of mana, or they need other things to be going on. So if all of your resources are wiped out in one go, there's not one thing that you can draw to swing the game back in your favor.
Right. At this point, we can see David only has, 7 lands in play? That's just not a high enough number of resources to just top deck something to come back into this game.
Hold on, could we cast both Casualties again here?
Oh my god. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So yeah, we actually can if we tap the creature lands. There isn't a basic land by my count for that Fabled Passage to grab.
Oh, there's no additional spawn. We've got to make sure we got enough black mana, but I think just one would be fine too.
I actually think Iaali is going to find a way to power through this incredibly trying time.
The world's tiniest violin being broken out here for Christopher Iaali.
He will just fully encapsulate the meaning of perseverance.
And this is, Sultai Ramp, much maligned among certain segments of the community. We're seeing here what the draw to it truly is, though. If you can progress the game to this state and just start resolving these massive haymakers, no other deck in the format can really keep up with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Even something like Ugin here is going to leave those lands behind. And that's about as powerful as it gets.
Absolutely. And Shark Typhoon for Inglis, ordinarily a good card when you have a bunch of mana and so on, but it's just so thoroughly outclassed by what's going on.
Yeah, this is a situation where we're going to see this Casualties of War come down, and Iaali once again just put Inglis down to 1.
I'll Casualties your Uro, I'll attack with my own. Get to draw 2 cards with the Uro and the Growth Spiral.
Ugh.
A paltry 3 modes, or 2 modes even, on the Casualties of War, but he'll take it.
Sometimes you just gotta find a way to get by.
There must be some limited fodder that has that text, right? Like destroy target creature, destroy target land.
And or does it have to do both, or can it just do one? Because Wrecking Ball does both of those, I believe.
You have to choose, though, which I don't want to do. I want it all, Emma.
You know what? You can have it.
I'm pro having cake, and I'm pro eating cake.
And this is a situation where both of these players were gunning for Temur Reclamation, but in totally different ways. And Iaali naturally building his deck to line up well against Temur Reclamation in ways that are going to also punish Inglis for just slightly altering the formula.
Absolutely. And there it is. We're going to see Christopher Iaali with his Sultai ramp deck take it down, moving to 6-0 in our tournament. And he is, again, we're not going to jinx it. We're not saying a lock, but we're going to see Christopher Iaali in our top 8 unless some miracle happens. And then David Inglis still on a tear with his twist on 4-color reclamation, falling to 5-1, but still in great position to make a run at this top 8 as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that we've kind of touched on a little bit is just how these players both kind of subverted expectations, kind of going for their own version of things. Because even this version of Sultai ramp that we're seeing from Chris Iaali is not the same Sultai ramp deck that we saw last weekend. This is almost like the Simic ramp deck if it were to include Thought Distortion and Casualties of War.
Yeah, this is, I already have these triumphs in my mana base. I can play Overgrown Tomb for free, Colorway can fire in my swamp, so let's look at the color pie. Let's see what I can do with that. And if you're consistently getting to 6 mana on turn 4, hey, Thought Distortion, Casualties of War, these start to look like pretty appealing cards.
Exactly, and it gives you a lot of great sideboard options against things that people are planning to attack the Simic decks with. You get access to things like Cry of the Carnarium, which honestly goes a long way to single-handedly fixing your Rakdos aggro matchup.
We saw earlier in the tournament, Jim Davis on Simic ramp getting run over by mono green aggro. That's a matchup where you really want to have hard removal at the 2 mana slot, or be able to work up to these sweepers that can get you back in the game by themselves. And so Sultai, you have a bit of a more painful mana base, but you open up so many more possibilities too.
Exactly, and this is something we talked about going into the round as well, is how easy it can be to just incorporate another color into a deck. And I really, really like the way that Iaali has decided to try and really innovate his own take on the ramp deck.
Absolutely, and we will be seeing Mono Green on camera again very shortly in our time stretching match. Caroline Kavanagh facing